Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I was worried a little bit when they closed the stage, but now that we see all of you, we're really, really excited, and thank you for coming. As was introduced, I'm Maria, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of She Loves Tech. And we are partnering with Singapore FinTech Festival to bring you this amazing stage with our founders, who are actually just flying in from different countries. I'll let them introduce themselves a little bit later. But as mentioned, we are a global platform, and we run the world's largest startup competition and acceleration platform for women. This year is actually our 10th year anniversary. And the ladies we have on stage today are our global finalists for this year. So they have a lot to say, and without further ado, I will let them introduce themselves one by one. So perhaps I can start this session by, sorry, just a little bit of an echo, but I want to get you to introduce yourself, your vision, right? Maybe we can start with that. What is your vision for your companies, and what led you to basically founding your incredible businesses, starting with Shu Xian?
Okay. Thank you, Rhea. So everyone, my name is Shu. I am from a startup called Megarium. We're based in Singapore, and essentially we have a technology to convert contaminated plastic waste into a new construction material called new bitumen to pave eco roads in Singapore. So I guess for us, we actually started this business because my sister and I actually co-founded Megarium as we saw, as a kid, we actually saw how roads are paved, and they're actually using finite resources from the ground. Each meter of road that we pave uses natural resources such as crude oil-derived bitumen, and we thought that this process is actually quite unsustainable, and we want to do it sustainably because infrastructure development is still very important for each country's development. So there's something that we wanted to change. Yeah.
And Carla?
So my name's Carla Penn-Khan. I'm the co-founder of Profit Peak from Sydney, Australia. And our vision is for every commerce brand and retailer globally to be profitable and capital efficient. And now that might sound like it's a given, but there's very few that exist. So that's what we're trying to change.
And Dr. Anna?
Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Anasuya Roy, and I lead a health tech startup called NanoSafe Solutions. And I have flown all the way from New Delhi just yesterday. So we are into antimicrobial technology. So what I mean by antimicrobial technology is we have built a technology that can inhibit the growth of microbes. And when I say microbes, I mean microbes like bacteria, virus, fungi, and algae. So we have a tech solution or a formulation that can go into different types of materials, which includes plastics, polymers, textiles, coatings. So we have the capacity to make all kind of materials antimicrobial through our technology.
Thank you for sharing. When I think about technology and why we started She Loves Tech, it was always anchored on the idea that technology is empowering. It's dramatically changing our lives in a good way. And just like, fintech, right? You can see different types of industries that technology is disrupting, so to speak, and we have all of you to represent different types of industries as well. So I'm curious, with your respective technologies, how do you think your companies are actually changing, the entire industry, or what are other people not doing, that is making your company really innovative? And maybe I can start with Anasuya first.
Yes, very interesting question, Rhea. So just to give a brief background about myself, I did my PhD from IIT Delhi, which is one of the premier most institution in India. Little bit of feedback on this mic, I guess, but audible, right? Okay, so I did my PhD in antimicrobial technology, and when we were finally submitting the thesis of the PhD, we quickly realized that all the antimicrobial solutions are given by giants, material science giants, either based on the UK and the US, and there are very few companies in this space, maybe 2 to 3, and these are all very big companies. There are no startups in the material science domain who can compete with these giants. giants. And after doing a very extensive PhD just on this technology, we believe that, we have the solution. We do have the tech solution to compete with these giants. Just that nobody has taken that extra step or the extra mileage. So what these tech giants are doing, they have taken silver. Silver as a material is known to be antimicrobial, but it is quite toxic as well. Some of the European countries have already banned silver as an antimicrobial. Yet there was no alternative technology to beat that. So what we have done, we have taken copper. Copper in traditional science and medicine has been used for purification of water as well as treatment of ailments. So what we have done is we have taken copper and made synthesized copper in such a way so that it behaves antimicrobial. So what essentially we have done is we have taken the safety and the goodness of copper and brought it to materials, and therefore we pose a much sustainable, safe, and non-toxic choice in front of our consumers when we talk about the antimicrobial space.
And from biotech, we move to SaaS. Carla?
So I'm a second-time founder. So my business before was a number of e-commerce brands that we successfully exited. And in running those businesses, we came out of COVID to a world where there was a lot more competition and there were a lot less barriers to enter, which meant that we had to become a lot smarter in how we scaled our business to achieve an exit. And what we found when we took a step back from being operational day to day, that the tech stack that we operated on was extremely disconnected. So as a business, we were running 20 to 30 plugins in order to run our business, which meant data silos and silos within our teams. So no one was working with a unified source of truth. And then as you come into the world with AI disruption and unstructured data, it's really, really important to start and anchor your business to a single unified data source of truth. Because once you do that, you're able to start automating and building a recommendation engine around how to become more profitable and capital efficient, which is ultimately what our vision is. And so what we needed to do was actually unify data and allow AI agents to run across, we call it run across, the operations of our customers, the retailers, and actually find ways to improve their business in real time. And so what typically happens is you receive your financial statements post-trade, and you can't actually go back and fix what has already happened. But if you're running AI automation, you can actually fix problems in your business in real time and drive more capital efficient and profitable results. And so that's what we do for our brands.
Shuxian?
Yeah, so from Gregorium, we are unique in a sense that we straddle two very legacy, traditionally conservative industries, which is built environment as well as waste management. So in this sense, when we tried to enter the market, it was very difficult for us because we found that a lot of these people who are running the company and in these industries, they have very traditional mindsets in a sense whereby they feel if something is not broken, why fix it? So it was very difficult for us to kind of penetrate the market. But 1-2 years in, we found that there was waves of support in a sense whereby organizations like DBS, Keppel, and Temasek, they were actually very supportive in terms of funding and giving us pilot opportunities such that we were able to pave our first eco road in Singapore. Until then, we found that we have come a very long way to have 10 eco roads in Singapore right now. So it wasn't easy trying to enter conservative traditional markets, but that was something that we tried to change.
Just out of curiosity, which eco roads are these? Just in case you drive today, we know that you're on Magorium roads.
Yep. So we have one at DBS Newton Green building. So about 3 years ago, DBS retrofitted their iconic building in Newton, and the entire driveway is actually paved with our material, which is derived from plastic waste. Near us, we also have Keppel infrastructure at Changi. The entire driveway there is also paved with our materials.
That's amazing. So, we have obviously the spotlights on us, and when we're talking about innovation all the time, it sounds like this amazing thing, and it's so easy, and we just happen to be on stage today. But it is the effort of the founders, the entire teams, and there's a lot of hard work related to building such groundbreaking innovation. So I wanted to ask, for you, all of you, starting such an idea, what maybe were the hardest times, right? Can you maybe recall a moment where you felt like, okay, this is really, really tough. Maybe you start to question, maybe not, but what has been the most challenging throughout this journey so far?
Yep. So I think earlier I also mentioned the first 2 years were very, very difficult because what we have is a new material that has not been tested in the field before. So this was something that a lot of companies and a lot of firms were not willing to stick their neck out for until we actually met with companies and personnel who were actually supportive of what we were doing and gave us that opportunity to pilot in their premises itself. So the first 2 years was difficult. We actually did a lot of cold calling, reaching out personally to all these firms, construction firms, and asking them whether they are willing to take this leap of faith with us. But for a really, really long time, we were rejected. So in that sense, it was quite disappointing for us, and it felt like we wanted to give up. But thank goodness we pushed through, and we're here today.
What made you push through, actually? Maybe
it's really all the support from the ground, government, as well as organizations that were able to give us these opportunities in terms of funding as well as pilot opportunities. It's really, really very important for us. Yep.
So ecosystem support, and I guess working with governments as well to change their minds and maybe get them on board to try your product. Showing traction, and then from there, moving up. Carla?
So for us, early on in our journey, one of the first questions we got from investors was, how are you going to disrupt Oracle? How are you going to replace SAP? How are you going to change the way brands and retailers operate globally from Sydney, Australia? And we had to break through that barrier and actually say, well, the industry's ripe for disruption. So whether you, from an investor lens, understand or not the pressing need, you actually need to go to the ground and you need to talk to brands and the retailers and say, are you happy with your current structured data based on a general ledger that's apparently recording revenue and costing you 6 to 7 figures a year with no operational value? Or do you want to see change? And so once we were able to convince a number of investors to actually hit the ground and talk to people, we found ourselves in a position of having a significantly oversubscribed round from global investors. And so we had to push through that barrier and say, hey, while you're an investor and you've got an investor lens on right now, I'm an operator. I know how these brands and retailers are operating because that's me. That was me in my prior business. So you need to actually talk to operators, the actual consumer of our technology, and see if there's a place in the market for it. And if there is, come talk to us. And they did.
Anna?
Yeah, for us, what has happened is because we are more into formulations and products, and our innovation largely came from a lab. So the first part, or the very early stages of the startup, involved making that lab stage product into something commercial, which itself is a lot of challenge. So we know as chemists, as material scientists, whatever that we do in the lab in small scale, and we largely deal with nanomaterials and micromaterials, we do it in a very small batch size, typically in grams or milligrams. But when I am supplying to industries, when I'm supplying in commercial scale, I have to synthesize in kg or in tons, which is like 1,000x or a 10,000x multifold of what we have done. And sometimes what happens is whatever recipe, whatever parameters that you set in the lab do not replicate equally when you go to a larger machine or a bigger machine. And for us, what has happened, what had been very challenging in the early days, because again, as Sue said, this is, for us also, it is a new material. So for a new material, very less people will come forward and help you in manufacturing it. So we don't own any manufacturing facility. We have a small lab, that's it. So to make that lab scale product into commercial scale, you need a lot of ecosystem players coming forward and helping you and telling you, okay, we will synthesize the material for you. So it took a lot of convincing. I remember I spent close to 3 months calling up people. I think I didn't leave a single manufacturer out. I called all of them, and all of them had already said no. So I was at the point that I am not very sure how I'm going to scale up that technology. And thankfully, with the government self, the Indian government gave me a grant, which kind of helped me upscale the technology. And after making that technology also, there's not a lot of credibility when we talk about startups, right? Because the people we are currently giving these kind of products to companies are very, giant leaders in their own spaces. So for a startup to give the same product, which is very technically rich, because I'm talking about antimicrobials here, it was very difficult to convince people. At one point of time, we had already, we had given up hope that we should do something else. We should make a different technology which can be easily absorbed. But when we get the first client, when we get the first revenue hitting the bank account, you get a lot confident about your technology. And right now, we are supplying to people, leaders in our, not only in our country, but they do a lot of export, as well as they export to Singapore, Australia as well. So that kind of helped us to build a lot of confidence in moving forward.
It's actually interesting, both of you mentioned the government in this case. It seems like, in a lot of countries right now, governments are really playing a huge role in anchoring a lot of the new innovations. Actually, for us as well, we're running different programs right now. One is on a climate tech accelerator, and actually the Korean government is sponsoring that, right? Previously, we had another program where it's the Canadian government that was sponsoring. So I think governments are playing a huge role. So just an interesting insight. I was looking at the design on the stage, and I keep seeing these cities, and I guess very apt as well to this conversation. That being said, we have a lot of, I guess, industry people here. I don't know, how many of you are founders? Maybe we can just get a sense of the room. How many of you are investors? What about the rest? If you just want to shout, maybe, just to get a sense, I guess, what role do you play in this ecosystem? Or maybe you're just interested in technology? Advisor. Okay. And for the others? Sorry, I'm a little bit deaf. I don't think but okay, so we have a mix of different people here. We're all coming on the banner of FinTech, and on stage right now, we're bringing you different types of, I guess, startups in different industries. So maybe we can, give a bit of a lesson, right, and give people some insights. You have, starting with, I guess, sustainability, waste, climate. Maybe you can share a little bit, what does the industry look like right now? You obviously you're anchored here in Singapore. Maybe related to Singapore, how is the sort of like the climate tech, right? Or maybe the sustainability vertical here at the moment? Is it a hot industry? Are there a lot of funding going into it? Are there a lot of startups, right? Maybe you can share a little bit about the industry right now as you see it.
Yeah, so in Singapore, actually, we have met a lot of very amazing founders with technologies in climate space. What we like to say is that we're actually very fortunate to be doing this at this time, because we've met a lot of founders with technologies that didn't work in the past. It's not because they are not impactful. It's actually because it wasn't really the buzzword at the point of time. So a lot of funding, a lot of support wasn't going to that space. But right now, what we're seeing is that increasingly a lot of support are coming from the entire ecosystem, like you mentioned, governments, private organizations, and even non-profit organizations as well. A lot of people are looking at this space and focusing on it to see how else we can expand the impact that all these solutions and founders are actually creating. So definitely this support is increasing really. We see it year on year.
That's true. I mean, personally, I see a lot of new funds anchored here, domiciled here in Singapore, that are focusing on climate heavily as well. So it is definitely a very hot and trendy topic, I could say. And Carla, obviously SaaS is where, in my opinion, where the startup world kind of started in a way. There's a lot of like software and things. So I'm curious now in this maybe next phase of tech, how do you think the industry has changed for SaaS?
So within the commerce industry, SaaS is typically disconnected. So you run with multiple different apps solving different parts of problems within your company. And most of those solutions are anchored around revenue generation. But anyone who runs a business or is entrepreneurial will tell you that sometimes adding more revenue into your business actually decreases profitability. And so as a founder, you end up in this position where you're doing more for less. Whereas as a corporation, sometimes that can work, especially if you're moving towards an IPO. But for the vast majority of brands and retailers globally, they need to actually be operating efficiently. And so what we have taken a different approach to is the way traditional enterprise resource planning software works is that it's a structured database. And that structured database is anchored around the general ledger and producing revenue and recording revenue. But really, if you take a step back from what's traditional and you look at what does an actual operator need, what does their team need to operate more profitably and capital efficiency, it's actually unstructured data with AI automation sitting on top. Now, what our advantage is as a new player in the market is we don't have a legacy structured database. We have the advantage by being a first mover in the AI ERP disruption to actually set up an unstructured database from day one. And so from a complexity point of view, we don't have to spend 10, 15 years like SAP or Oracle building a legacy database which they have to run on today. We can actually start from scratch and we can pipe data and run AI models and not even build a structured database. And then when the time comes that we have to produce a structured database for our clients, when they need to do annual reporting or quarterly reporting or whatever that might be, AI is sophisticated enough to just turn that database into a structured record. But you don't need to start at that point. And so for us, SaaS traditionally sat on top of a structured database. So you spent years building data, whereas now you don't need it. So that's where the AI disruption has really changed the game. And it's the right time to start thinking about what does that next 5 to 10 years of SaaS look like? Is it a structured database, a legacy product, or is it an unstructured database with AI and large language models running operations?
And of course, biotech is a completely different area as well. It takes a lot of R&D to really build your products. And so I'm curious, how is the biotech kind of industry right now? Will you say that, as you mentioned, there's a lot of difficulty in getting people to maybe adopt new types of materials and so on? But how does it work for your industry, right? Maybe you can walk us through that process from, I guess, R&D to eventually going to market.
Right. Rhea, as you mentioned, you're perfectly correct in the sense that whenever we talk about a health tech or a biotech startup, the gestation period is very long. For us, maybe it is a little shorter because still we are dealing with antimicrobials, which goes into materials, which are inanimate objects. So we go into plastics, polymers, textiles, coatings, etc. Now, there's a lot of companies in biotech and health tech who does drugs, right? Drug delivery, tissue engineering. These kind of solutions take a very, very long time. So the gestation period is normally, 5-6 years of R&D, even reaching up to 10 years in some cases. So there's a very long gestation period, and what happens is you have to go for clinical trials as well. So some of the drugs which you're taking inside the body or is in contact with the skin, they have to pass a lot of clinical trials as well. And clinical trials would take a lot of time, 10 years, 15 years. And then you have to get the drug registered, which is itself a very long and cumbersome process. So what is very much required in this whole journey is the funding of money, because without that, it cannot progress to the next stage, right? So there's a lot of patient capital that is required for these companies to scale up. But fortunately, right now, with the startup boom that is happening globally and also in India, what is happening is the investors understand that yes, this has potential. Not right now, not quick wins, but then in the long term, this drug or this product or this material does have the capacity to disrupt the industry. Earlier, what used to happen is, again, there are global pharmaceutical companies who used to take over, and it's very difficult for a startup to penetrate in this space. But slowly that mentality is changing. Slowly the investors as well as the customers are understanding that yes, startups can deliver a much efficient product, a much efficient formulation. It's just that it will take some time for them to come in the market.
And our title of this panel, it's She Loves Innovation, Helm of Entrepreneurial Impact. So I want to ask all of you, you mentioned a little bit about your vision earlier and what you're trying to do with your respective companies. I'm curious, in maybe the next 10 years, what would you like to change, right? Whether it's in the industry or just society at large, what change do you want to see? And why are you using your business to, I guess, derive the outcome, right? So what is that big change you want to see maybe 10 years from now? Maybe starting with Carla.
Sure. So for our industry, trading's all about, in the historic, about revenue and getting a revenue multiple and getting an exit on the back of revenue. For me, I know the long-term vision for my industry is actually profitable outcomes for an EBITDA exit. And so my goal is to see that all SMB to enterprise brands, not just enterprise brands, but SMB and the mid-market can actually reach peak profitability, hence the name Profit Peak, and achieve capital efficiency so they don't have to raise money, they don't have to have lines of credit to operate, they can actually sustain their business models and get the exit. So if you think about Shopify, if anyone is invested in it or following it, that's a traditional fintech, even though it's a commerce CMS tool, they make most of their money out of their fintech revenue. But that's actually 12 million people's livelihood. So if we can make those 12 million people operate profitably and capital efficient, that's my personal goal.
That's interesting. Actually, Southeast Asia is powered by such companies, right? And for those of you who don't know, majority of these companies are actually led by women in Southeast Asia. So this is definitely the perfect region to get this vision started. Shusian?
So for me, I guess because we're in the waste management sector, as well as built environment, these two are traditionally quite conservative. But I think what we hope to see is a little bit more innovation within these sectors. So in particular, maybe for waste management. In Singapore, we're quite advanced in a lot of technologies, in a lot of spaces, but waste management-wise, I think we're lagging a little bit. In Singapore, unfortunately, only 5% of our plastic is actually being recycled, and a lot of this is also being exported to other countries. So in that sense, it is not a very sustainable method of managing something that is quite integral to society. I think what we aim to do at Magaram is to use Singapore's plastic waste to pave Singapore's roads. So once we have done this in Singapore, we are looking to bring this technology to other countries, especially developing countries, whereby they have the same waste issue as well as the need for infrastructure development. So aside from Magaram, I think it would be a dream to actually see each country having their own waste management solution to actually manage it within their country. Yeah.
That's true. I just agree. I think, many countries have a lot of waste, right? And we need to find a way to really sustainably deal with such waste, for the lack of the word. And Anna?
Yeah. So for us, it is more about the health and hygiene sector and how we uplift the living standards of people who are not really using very hygienic sources of, let's say, water. For a simple thing like water, we have it here in a canned, bottle. or a canned Tetra Pak. But in developing countries, many of the people do not have any point of use water purification, which means that they drink contaminated water with bacteria all the time and they fall sick all the time. And this is very common in a lot of countries. What we aim to do is touch that vertical and make the hygiene standards of those places a little bit more towards the higher side, so that they do not fall sick. And globally, all the countries who are facing such problems would not really face such a problem, because for us in Singapore, maybe for you, for me, this is a very small problem because we do not deal with these kind of diseases, this kind of problems. But for a lot of them, a lot of underdeveloped countries, this is a real problem. And we would really like to touch those areas and uplift the global standards of hygiene and safety.
Thank you for sharing. Those are, I guess, visions that I would like to see together with you as well. We have 1 minute left, and I want to give you space to maybe tell us what's next for your respective companies, and maybe a call to action for the room here, if there's any. Starting with Chu Sian.
Yep. So at Magorum, I think we are looking to expand our impact further, recycling more plastic waste as well as paving more eco roads. Right now, we're actually focusing on the healthcare sector because I think this is where plastics is actually quite essential due to the nature of the industry. Most items need to be sterile, they're one-time use, and unfortunately, plastic is a very key material to the industry. So that's something we're trying to focus on, actually get more partners on board to see how we can make the industry a little bit more sustainable.
So any healthcare professionals, please come this way. Carla?
So for us as an AI SaaS, the more data we can consume and learn from, the better the models we produce and the better the outcomes for the brands operating on our platform. So for us, it's about onboarding more customers as smoothly as possible, converting them, monetizing them, and learning from the data and providing them with a better operating platform than they've ever experienced before.
Yes.
I would directly like to talk to all the aspiring founders here out there, and I'm sure there will be a lot of aspiring founders in the group, and I would just like to convey to them that if you are looking to build a startup, this is the startup era. You should do it now. There's a startup boom all over. It's global. So please take that step and do start your company, because when you start a company, it's very addictive. When you get into the groove of things, it's very difficult to leave it. So if you're still thinking whether I should do it or not, definitely you should go ahead and do it. And while, the last key takeaway message that I want to give is perseverance and resilience is everything in startup. I think all of you would agree. Just stick to it. Sometimes it will feel like it's not working, and maybe I should go back to whatever job I was doing. But it is very addictive. I'm sure all of you would agree. And you just kind of have your perseverance, and things will work out for sure. That's what happened with me, and that's what happened for all of us here. So I would urge all of you to take that step and go ahead and go build your dreams.
Perfect way to end this panel. Go with your dreams, persevere, be resilient, and the rest will follow after that. So with that, we conclude our panel, and thank you so much for joining us for this.